Welcome to the March meeting of the Advisory Council of Public Health for the town of Brookline. Great, so we have a good exciting agenda today. So starting off with announcements. Does anyone have any announcements?
I have anything other than what's, I think we'll talk more in the director's report about some of what's going on around the department.
Well, I will make on the record the announcement I made before that we do have a recent federal district court judge striking down the modifications to the federal vaccine recommendations for the CDC. More information will be available. Again, as Rosemary said, it doesn't really affect what happens in Massachusetts since we had our own state recommendations. Nonetheless, it should affect the conversations in the town. So that's good. All right. Then do we have anybody here for public comment?
Don't believe so.
Next time we'll have to put Brad back on the agenda so we can
Well, we're gonna have another crack.
we'll have another opportunity. Good.
Did you feel like
It felt like, all right, it's like we were the select board.
people have strong feelings about crowding? It was good to hear.
All right, the next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes.
Let's do it.
I'll move that we approve them.
And I second that.
Right, all in favor? Good. Any opposed? Right, motion carries. Minutes are approved. They were excellent. Good. All right, moving on to the Public Health Plaza.
Yes. Exciting update. I know shared out a couple times in these meetings about the Public Health Plaza and some of the progress that we've been making. So we've got a little team internally working on this, and Wendy McMuller, who's over there hanging out on the couch, is part of our team. She's on the admin team, and she's been working with us on the plaza. She has a background in architecture, so a unique skill set that we don't often have in public health. And so she has been kind of on the team with us from the beginning and working to kind of help us make decisions with DPW staff on design and color and all that. So I invited Wendy to come here tonight to give a quick update on the plaza and some of the additional requests that we are asking of ACPH as we try to move this project forward. So with that, hand it over to Wendy, as long as are you ready in Zoom?
I think so.
Awesome.
I'm in Zoom and okay, but I'm gonna stay off, right?
So yeah, you're the co-host, so you can
Okay.
share your screen.
Share your
I just
screen.
wanna share my screen. I'm sorry, it's been a very long time since I've shared my screen.
Yeah.
It's okay, we don't mind.
No
We're like,
judgment, no judgment.
yeah.
And I can play tech support if needed, Wendy, so.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm actually just trying here we go. That should, oh, okay. So I'm in my Plaza folder, sorry.
Come over, Wendy.
Okay, so I want to get to just all the documents right here.
So what are you gonna start with?
I'm gonna start with.
Are you gonna go through all of this?
Just super briefly.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm gonna start with this one. Oh, so I just, okay.
And then we have to go over to back to Zoom.
Oh, I have to do it with each one?
Yep.
Oh.
You might be able to share the whole, so if you go to share.
Sorry, guys.
If you should, as long as there's nothing you don't mind sharing off. If you do screen, you'll be able to show back and forth.
Or that are already been issued as a map because of timing or so.
No, I think it's a review for us.
Okay.
So now everybody can see everything that's on your screen. So you can just bounce around to the various things that you want to share with everybody.
Oh, okay. Okay. So. Okay,
We're done.
fantastic. Alright, so first of all, I just have to make one correction there. I don't have a background in architecture, it's interior architecture and design, just to be clear. I can't stand prize or anything. Okay, so let's see, so I believe you guys got an update, in December with the sketch that they had done. And this, what you're seeing up there, and I am sorry, I probably can't, can I zoom?
You can get rid of
You know, I can get rid of that.
Yeah, that'll help.
Okay, and I can get rid of bookmarks, that will help.
I'm
Look
not
at that,
sure what those
perfect.
black lines are
So,
I think those are the Zoom.
okay, well, that's okay, you know what, I'm gonna do a really high level anyway, and I can send all of these documents if, you know, or link to them if you'd like, so. This is just to show you, really, this is very detailed, but this is the construction document now. So what you saw in December was the rendering,
Yeah.
very simple plan, and now we have progressed to this construction document, which is what the contractors will use to actually build the thing. And so it's got all of the landscape architecture notes, et cetera. And then the next thing I wanted to show you, so we are moving, I want to say almost exponentially since,
Oh, that's
you know, the
great.
beginning of the year, yeah. And let me just tell you, and John, please stop me if I'm saying anything that's either duplicative or erroneous. But Jessie Weisner, who's our landscape architect, you know, Parks Department, she came up with the ingenious idea to not put everything out to bid, which, as you know, is a big process here with the government, but instead we could use basically the vendors that they already have kind of procured and already vetted through a lot of the smaller type projects, you know, not the big schools, of course, but so that saves a lot of money. One, the design has been done in-house. Jesse's a landscape architect as well as Miley and Patricia, who I don't think you know yet, Patricia. And so that has saved on design skills, and then as far as construction, contractors will save tens of thousands of dollars, which allows us to go forward with this phase one. So phase one then is the plaza, the original idea. So it's the actual pavers, the furniture, some of the plantings. I'll show you phase two in a moment, which is kind of the second objective to be here is to kind of give you an overview of phase two and then ask for your support in way of a letter that we can send off for the grant that Parks is working on. Let's see, I've got some, if this is gonna take too long, I certainly don't wanna take time doing it, but.
No, I think this is fun.
Is this okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's been a
like-
long
like
time,
10
right?
minutes.
Thinking about this, like maybe 2 years? Or
Yeah,
1 year?
we'll be coming up on 2 years in
Oh,
July.
nice.
Okay, good, yeah, this is fun stuff. Okay, so these are so originally we were gonna go with some herringbone pavers, which,
Mhm.
and pervious, of course. That was a must-have for us. We didn't want, concrete was gonna be cheaper, obviously, pervious pavers, much more sustainable, aligns with all of our objectives. So that's what we're gonna do. Now, the hexagonal herringbone pavers, we were going to do, but Driscoll had leftover hexagonal pavers,
Okay.
so enough that we could just add to it,
Exactly,
right?
yeah.
Save some money,
Reuse,
reuse
yeah.
the stock,
That's good.
exactly.
I
That was
love
why
this.
this part's
That's
well.
good.
So, and actually, as far as color block and all that, it's a random pattern, so that's fine. Plus they have, somewhere in the warehouse in New York, I believe it is, they have extra from this particular dye lot,
Okay.
so we don't have to worry about that.
Gosh, that's so nice.
Yeah.
Isn't that nice?
We were thrilled. They were like, do you mind? We were like, we don't, as long as they're permeable pavers, we don't have any strong feelings or
Yeah.
Like that they're leftovers from just like all the
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
In fact, off in the right-hand corner is where these pavers, the original pavers. So we're gonna scoot down to the furniture, which I don't think you've seen, is that right?
We have not.
Okay, so they did send the furniture out to bid, with 3 different companies. This did come back, as the lowest bid, and actually I think we all kind of consensus was we liked it the best anyway. Yeah, it's very colorful, they have accessibility options. We're doing a combination of benches, as you see here, not the serpentine, I love that, but there's no room for that. I think that's over at Emerson Garden, over there. And then these picnic tables. The color combination is, I believe, mainly the blues and the greens with, I think, a bunch of red or or orange, I think we threw in there. I don't remember what we finally decided upon.
What are they made?
Metal and wood,
Yeah,
but I
and
can't.
the wood was, I think the reason we preferred those was the wood we thought might be cooler in the summertime versus the
yeah.
metal.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we have, I think, four tables, and one of them is going to be completely accessible so that we can accommodate wheelchairs. Okay. Then the next thing is, all right, we're all still in phase 1 here. A lot, very colorful, very difficult to read. But you get the idea of that there's a lot of variety of native flowers and shrubs. Most of these are going to be pollinators. That also aligns with, you've heard of the pollinator pathways, I'm sure you've seen a lot of the gardens, right?
Yep.
Mothers Up Front, and that group is very excited, and they've been pushing for this. I'm actually a little bit part of that group, but I just sort of lurk behind the scenes actually. So I am absolutely confident that we are going to have a lot of volunteers who will help maintain this, because one, it's very public facing, obviously, is where we are, and a lot of people are just excited about, something like this in the public realm. So which, just as a quick aside, we did ask, what is DPW going to do? DPW is only responsible for mowing the lawn.
Okay.
Thus, it's all on us and our volunteers in our group to maintain it, to water it. But we did come up with some great watering plans. We've got a spigot on the side. We can get some soaker hoses. I live close by. We've got a lot. And then again, I'm going to tap into precinct 4 people over here. We've got precinct 6 people over here.
I think I
And
committed to one
you
morning a
did
week
commit,
on my
yes.
walk, yeah.
Yeah, John committed to the mornings. I said, I'll just come in the evenings. I'm not a morning person, so I'll come on the evenings and the weekends. But I think we'll get that covered. And, and you guys have.
Is there a space for wildflowers that basically are perennials that just keep
That's
coming
what
up?
all this is gonna be.
Well, okay, wildflowers,
Yes.
so you don't have to necessarily maintain it once they grow or so, and
Yeah, exactly. So thanks for asking that question. They will all be, for the most part, they'll all be perennials. Yeah. And my understanding, and then from my own garden too, it takes a few years for it to get really established, and then after that, you really don't have to water it. Like, I didn't really have to water my English garden last year because it was all very settled. So, and then there is, so this part that's, and John, this is maybe if you can clarify this part, because I might be wrong on it. So there's the entire phase 1 planting here, and then what they have outlined in red is the potential first phase of planting. And if we were kind of initially concerned that it might be too much planting for us to take care of, and as volunteers and staff. But then we would do a second phase planting to see kind of how, also to see how these plants take in that environment with that, right, that soil and such. But I think, is that what you recall? Okay.
Yes, yeah.
But I think what we'd like to do, and I don't think we've actually passed this on to parks yet or not, but we probably just want to do all the planting all at one time.
Yeah.
So
because of the
really good
CPC funding, we felt like to a scale that everybody feels comfortable with, we'd rather just do it all at once.
Yes.
And then whatever we don't spend, get back to CPC to redistribute to other programs.
Right, which I'll say that, this is just, as you can see, there are a lot of different wonderful, ideas here. I'm gonna call these up on my free time. And we've got, okay, sorry, that's one we've already seen. Okay, so on, as I'm pulling this one up, they expect now, from going to not have enough money to having a little bit extra at the end, which is what they anticipate. The plan for that is to use that for potentially shoring up some, to work down here with our garden, that we have our vegetable garden, we have a retaining wall that's crumbling. And with some of the leftover funds, what we hope to do is to shore up that retaining wall, thus building more of our garden. And then over here on what we call Frank's side, he was a retirement guy. He used to plant there. He's retired actually. So we might want to take that over, and we can actually look at improving that side of it as well with any funds that we have left over. So that's kind of that's the high level plan there. Okay. Also, something else fun. You probably heard about some of the public art that we'd like to do. And this is lots of words, so we can go through this really quickly. But basically, we worked with the Parks Department and Health worked together on creating an RFP that went out last Friday to procure an artist to make a dragonfly sculpture. So pretty thorough. It's been going out. Let's see, our due date closes April 3rd, so that's about 2 weeks. So about 3 weeks total, I think. And let's see, there's some pictures. Yeah, here we've got this one right here. This is super close up. Might be too close up actually. But basically, this is right on if you see the curve here, right, the existing sidewalk, Harvard over here, the sculpture would be about right here in the corner. And then if you go up a little ways, that's where the utility box is gonna be, and I'll show you that in a second. Dragonflies are pollinators, but also the greater significance of this is, does anyone know the significance of the dragonfly and why we have that as a theme? Okay.
Yeah, I was reading I just read the thing about this poor woman who was a victim of domestic violence, but I
Yes.
didn't know anything about this until this moment.
So that's why it's really, that's why I thought it was really important that we retain the symbolism of the dragonfly. So just real quick, a woman who used to work here, Patty Morling, for 20 some years, worked with Alan Balsam. She was head admin. It was her daughter that was it was a murder-suicide. Her husband killed her and then killed himself out in Washington. It was 15 years ago now on Valentine's Day. Jennifer, her daughter, was in her 30s at the time, and she liked to write poetry and do photography and do some paintings and stuff. And she really loved the dragonfly. So Patty really took that on as a symbol for domestic violence. And so if you've seen our pins that we have for DVRT, et cetera, you might have seen the dragonfly, but that's where that is. And when talking to Andy Dean, who's the executive director of the Arts Commission, about the sculpture that we wanted to have out there, he said, oh, well, maybe we can do there's a lot of ideas for pollinators, et cetera, we could do, this or that. And then that's when I realized, we need to get back to what the dragonfly. So I explained to him what it was. So we put it on the RFP so that people can understand. We don't want it to be down, we want it to be upbeat and looking forward, but it is important, I think, to keep that in mind. So that's great. Okay, and then the next, and this can be, any medium, and then the next thing we have, well, you know what, I don't need to pull up the next one because everybody knows what a utility box looks like, right? Completing the art around town. So we've got that utility box out there. We've got an RFP out for that as well. And it's circulating. Certainly, I'd be happy to send you the RFPs also if you know any artists you'd like to send them out to.
So you're sending it out through the Arts Council?
Arts Council, Council on Aging, our social media, a lot of different places. And if you happen to have any ideas, we're happy to send them out to this as well. Okay, also, to wrap up phase one, sorry, I think this is actually taking a lot longer than I planned.
Okay.
But the CPA committee had a meeting last week. We were able to give them an update. We actually say this is what we've done. Next update is going to be huge because of all that has been going on these past few months. But We did request an extension because technically all the CPA funds are supposed to have been spent by the
Right.
end of the cycle. We'll be just kind of on the line because June is when I think we're gonna be putting in the sculpture. And then also if we have any plantings left, because we haven't ordered the plantings because we wanna wait till we can actually get them in. So there might be a little bit, we might be on the cusp.
It's so quick.
So, yes, I know, right? So we did get an extension from CPA, right, exactly. They're just pleased, you know,
Yeah,
that this is
right.
going forward, which leads us into phase 2. So,
New
Um,
forest.
Yeah, phase 2 was
phase 2.
not something that we had imagined at the start, but really came out of our initial discussion with DPW. As they looked at the totality of that kind of open space back there, they said, you know, you've got this lovely other space, and there's this dirt path, what do they call it?
Like a spirit
Like a
walk.
line of sight, or no, there's a word for it. Essentially, residents have declared this as like,
Yeah.
this is our path,
Oh,
right?
right,
Yeah.
yes, there's a-
And that got them all thinking, and they said, you know, clearly residents are using this as a walkway
Yeah.
through your property up to the school, right? They said it would be great if we could find additional funding down the road, a grant or whatever, you know, let's do some more greenery on one side and let's put an ADA accessible pathway in. And we said, okay, great, and we said,
Yeah.
what's the price tag? And they said, it's a lot of money, and we said, we'll never get there.
Mhm.
But here we are, fast forward, because of the great work over at DPW. They've got a lot of interesting ideas for how to move phase 2 forward, so
Where did the money come?
Well,
let's
So-
chat
my
about
question,
it.
my question, I was like, okay, so the estimated, it's really rough at this point, but the estimated cost for phase 2 is gonna be somewhere in the range of $300,000 to $400,000. And that's primarily because we don't know what the hardscaping will be at this point. It hasn't, you know, there are some drawings here, but we don't have construction drawings on this yet, so, you know, contractors have to add to that. And then just to give you some context here, okay, back here that's the wall back behind us that meets up with the condos right there, right? You know, the condominiums back there. This is the hill, so starting up here, here's our generator back here, right there. I'm pointing to it with my finger, right there. And then right now, and this our parking lot, kind of over here to the side.
Okay.
Pierce, you know, is right back here,
Yeah,
construction. It's residents, but it's mainly students who have paved that way, literally and figuratively. That's worn through it there, and it basically kind of goes straight down the hill right
Yeah.
there, right now. Harvard is here. This is an existing, color easier to see. This is the existing sidewalk that goes into the building, and then this, where the Remembrance Garden is, current one, and this will be, you know, graded up to code for
And there's stairs.
accessibility, right? And then exactly, here's some stairs. The mini forest would be back here along the retaining wall there. And then some, you know, more plantings, et cetera, lots of planting shrubs, et cetera, around here.
What are all those circles?
Trees.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And the small circles, is a hill, basically a hillside or something like that? or
This
that-
is like topography, like the undulating curves here.
No, just above those small circles, is that like a shrub bed or something, or?
Oh, that's the mini
That's the
forest.
mini forest.
Oh, that's the mini.
Yeah.
forest.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do we have any pictures of the existing one?
I don't have one. You know,
Pardon my
if
ignorance.
you've been
No.
No, I didn't know either, so mini forest as opposed to trees, so mini forest is, I mean,
smaller, yeah,
Smaller
smaller,
trees.
but, there is a mini forest. One
Oh,
of the first
here.
one's got
Wendy,
one
are you
in
on
on
Teams?
Brooklyn Avenue.
I'll
Oh,
send you,
yes.
town actually has some pictures of the evolution.
Okay, is this Brooklyn Ave one probably?
Now,
Yeah.
will they put in lighting, given the fact that like half the year, I don't know, I mean, it appears probably that be people empty out of the school, I'd assume there's not too many later afternoon or evening activities there. But not with the new school, do you think there's gonna be more trafficking, like, you know, so that it's safe for people, especially with the stairs going in?
That's a good idea. That's a really good
I know
point.
it's a cost, but
Yeah.
to
Well, like
electrify.
20, that's not so many.
Yes,
That-
it
that-
is a really- yeah.
So if you scroll down, there's actual pictures of
Okay.
area.
Oh, yeah, this is enough, okay,
Yeah.
so pre-planting. Oh, is that gonna go through a slideshow?
I think so.
Okay.
So that's what it would look like after the planting. That's kind of the size of what the main course looks like. And
Wow,
then
it's
it,
really
and then it grows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't know what the trees, I don't know if they've scheduled them yet, but, I'm assuming the trees, they've taken into consideration that there's that retaining wall back there and
Right.
the depth, the width, so what's exciting about this, and if, I don't know if you had a chance to read the letter that that Parks and Sustainability put together.
Yep.
Addressed to you, Charlie, but I love the way that they articulated it. I got so excited reading it because it points to some of our town goals, right? It encompasses our open space plan that the town's been working so hard on over these years, and then also to the mini canopy, the tree canopy plan for climate mitigation. And as you may have heard in previous studies also, this particular area of Brookline is a hot spot. It's a heat island. And like it's
In here, you mean like this little square patch or Brookline
I
Village?
think this is the
Brookline Village,
yeah.
particularly down by
Washington,
Route
more
9.
Commercial.
And
Yeah.
up to you. Because I feel like there's a lot of trees around here.
Yeah, I think just the general, like the general area,
Like
so,
Harvard Street and stuff.
yeah, and then Route 9, Washington,
Yes,
Dana
Route 9 for
Farber,
sure.
Plaza, all of that, yeah.
Alright.
So, let's see, so 300,000 to 400,000, so we're working on a couple things, so we are in-house working on, a grant with the state called the Healthy Aging's Grant. We'll tell you more about that later, but just to let you know that we're working on it, something that Jefferson, who you probably met, Jefferson came up with, and has really been working hard to kind of figure out how we can apply for it. So essentially, it's a grant up to $200,000 per year for 3 to 5 years, and it wouldn't be for any construction. It precludes any construction for that type of grant. However, it would be used for programming. And then when we get the public plaza built, there's gonna be an opportunity to have all kinds of activities, right? With the town, with other, nonprofits, with schools, with a lot of people. So we are working on coming up with up to 5 partners that we want to work with particularly. The good thing about Brookline is we have so many partners we work with, we can only pick 5. So, but it's gonna be maybe tough to get that grant because the state is looking at, populations that are more underserved.
Sure.
But we think we have a viable opportunity here for that. Now, onto the Cooling Corridors grant, which sustainability is working on, and what this letter is about. They are applying for this grant, which is up to $75,000, in which we could use it towards the plantings and some of the construction. It'd really be just for the planting, not the hardscape in this. And that's the letter that Alexandra and Alex wrote, and then we're hoping for your support, letter of support
Looks great.
for that, so, and then we also.
Assume everyone's in favor of the objections to the letter.
Absolutely in favor.
Alright.
Like,
That would be
and
like
if you
screwed, like who's gonna be against like this gorgeous
In the original plaza, is there space for 2 big bellies? Because they're gonna have a lot of people sitting there, and
That's a good
having like
question.
sippy cups or whatever sippy cups.
They are gonna put big bellies, that is
Oh,
part of
big
the
bellies,
plan,
okay,
on part
good,
of
because
the
we don't
phase 1.
need rodents,
No,
yeah.
Imagine.
Help the apartment.
No, it's really a bummer when people say that they've seen rats.
I know.
Charlie and I came across one night.
Yeah, we
I
did.
bet.
After.
Yeah.
Yeah, why not come back.
And like probably not even always good for you.
No.
No, looked at us and just said, hey,
Come
kept
get
walking.
us, right?
Yeah.
So if you sign, I will happily scan that and get that off to
Oh, you want my real
Alex,
signature?
well,
or
just
like
tonight,
my wet
maybe.
signature?
Maybe
Sure.
Yes.
tonight,
Yeah, we
yeah.
Anyone have a pen?
I
And
probably
then,
do.
I'll
I
send
have
them
one
out.
right here.
All right,
Pens
I've got
with
that.
me.
And then we do hope to wrap this up, we do plan to go, our plan is to go for this, the next round of CPA funding for the phase 2 and hopefully utilize some money there, whatever it doesn't get covered by this grant that thank you, I know we're gonna get now.
Awesome.
So we feel like we've been good stewards of the tax dollars with CPA funds, and we're hopeful that with all the work that Alexandra and Jesse and Patricia and the rest of the team have done for us, that we'll be good candidates for future CPC funding. So fingers crossed. CPA.
Community what?
CPC is the committee.
Right.
CPA is the fund.
Community Preservation Act.
All right.
Yeah.
That's
So if this converting a path into like an official walk, if this were private property, it's, oh my God, no, you're like incurring life.
Yeah, no, this is our property.
But this being public,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. We're basically creating a sidewalk.
Yeah, and incorporating a lot more trees.
Yeah.
Good.
And all the existing trees
What was that?
the
all the
existing
existing
trees
trees.
Oh,
will
good.
stay, which is good.
And we're really excited about the plaza because, as Wendy kind of talked about that grant, I mean, my hope is to turn the Denny Room and the plaza into a much more robust community space. 'Cause
Good.
right now, the Denny Room sits vacant most of the day. And we need it for staff meetings and other space, but there's a lot of time during the day when that could be used for a lot of exciting programming, so.
Did you mention the door?
Oh, yeah, I
I was
got-
wondering what are you doing with the door, because it's a pretty unwelcoming door, right?
Oh, well, now it's a glass door.
Is it really?
Yeah. Ask and you shall receive, apparently. I had, as we were doing some of the other renovation work around the building, I just happened to mention to Charlie Simmons, I said, hey, we're doing a plaza out there. It'd be nice to have a much more welcoming door that connects the two spaces
Yeah.
together, and without even any prompting, a couple weeks later, we had a new door installed. So,
It's pretty cool.
yeah. So
That's
that's already been installed, which is exciting.
And QR code stickers on those tables are so that people can actually scan and get right to your site where you can tell them all the new breaking things and what help.
And there was some talk about having Wi-Fi accessibility out there and maybe putting a screen out there. Like we'll see what the future holds, but I agree, QR code's an easy.
Yeah, just your site, so they can get in.
I mean, I was gonna ask when you were talking about programming, whether there's potential to do any tent or anything like that over that space, but if you have access to the new room, maybe that.
And we do have some pop-up
Temporary.
tents, right? We have some smaller tents, the 10 by 10s that we do for some of our, like when we go to farmers market stuff,
Yeah,
but. It'd be nice to have like a
Yeah, I know.
pergola or some sort of
Yeah.
shading, but
Yeah.
like, we wanna be respectful.
A retractable room now.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, and so that's how we're picturing it, is the dining room kind of being that if the weather is
Good.
inclement kind of space. Yeah.
That's exciting, well, thank you. That's great. Labor love, that's great. All right, well, good, all right, well, we should move on to some of the perhaps less exciting.
Hey now,
What's up, Liz?
And less uplifting, but also very important long term.
Oh, the budget.
the budget.
Oh, there's the budget. Okay. Well, do you want to say anything about our budget then?
I would love to, and appreciate the opportunity. Let me, share.
David. Mhm. Welcome, David.
Hello?
So you're presenting on Wednesday to the advisory.
Yes, I'm presenting to advise the subcommittee for human services on Wednesday. I might need sharing privileges. And so I thought, I know Sigal had done this and I thought it would be good, I'm gonna do it with staff on Friday as well, if I'm sharing with the community, might as well share with ACPH and staff, so. Just have a few quick slides that I'm gonna run through and then I figured we could just jump into a discussion. So this year's about transitions. We had a transition in leadership mid-year. We've got some transitions in our department budget moving forward. We've talked a lot in this room about the impacts of some of the federal transitions and how those have trickled down to the state and the local. And so as I was reflecting on the questions that I received from the AC subcommittee, it became clear that I think it's important for staff, for ACPH, and for the community to recognize we're not in a crisis moment, but we need to be prepared for how we respond moving forward as we have to transition off of some of the state and federal grants that have been supporting our work over the past few years. So with that, I think I'll jump right in, and these are all, this data is all in the FY27 budget, the interactive budget, so anyone can go there and access all of this data. So the biggest changes for the department this year, it looks like two cuts, there's certainly two changes. We are pulling one staff person off of the operating budget, and they are being transitioned over to opioid settlement funds. So we're not losing the staff person, but we are certainly changing how we are funding that position for the foreseeable future. So that's the biggest change to the budget, and the other is a proposed cut of $50,000, and that is the Brookline Bounty Program. And that was just, we had to, every department went to the 6th floor and had a conversation, the same way the schools are doing right now, and we were told, here's what the number we need to get to. Assuming no changes to the budget with a townwide vote in the spring, this is the number we need to get to. And so as I looked at where we could cut from, obviously we wanted to protect staff and the delivery of services that we provide through staff. The services line was the only other space really that we could cut from. The Brookline Bounty was the most recent program that we've added. It's certainly not something I would, wanted to do, but forced to make a decision. This is where the cuts came down. The other thing I just wanted to note, we're losing $194,500 in federal grants starting in FY27. We were aware of these cuts. These were not surprises. We're prepared for them, but I think it's important for the community to understand that it does have an impact on us. The biggest cut is a grant that was a pass-through from the CDC through Mass DPH. It was around $170,000 a year for the past 4 years. It was the contact tracing grant. So when we started, when EJ was still here and she was doing all the contact tracing by herself in the midst of the Omicron wave, the state stepped in and said we need to get contact tracers in our local communities. And so they started providing funding to communities and regional collaboratives to do that work. We hired some contact tracers at the time. Things obviously changed with the COVID pandemic, and the state said, okay, now that things have calmed down a little bit, if you want to adapt what this funding is used for, let's have a conversation. So that's what we've done over the past couple of years. Sigal was doing it, I've been doing it this year. That has funded everything from parts of the funding for our emergency preparedness coordinator to other small programming. We have used it to boost funding for the Brookline Bounty Birds program. So in the winter when we give out the chickens and turkeys, if we've had a little bit of money left in that account, we've been able to help pay for that, to sustain some of that program. The other piece is about $66,000 that has been coming through FEMA, emergency preparedness grants. As far as I'm aware, our region did not get funded this year, so that money won't be coming. That was the other half of the funding that was supporting our emergency preparedness coordinator and some of the supplies for some of the work that she does. And then the other piece is FY28. So looking ahead to FY28, our Metro Public Health Collaborative is on a PHE, a Public Health Excellence Grant. We have full funding for FY27. This is the last year of committed funding from the state. Our expectation is the state will continue to fund it. The question remains at what level. That's another one where the state has been contributing a certain portion and the state has been using federal dollars to support it. And now that federal funding is coming to an end, and the governor and HHS and others are going to have some difficult conversations about how much they fund.
Would that impact your epidemiologists specifically? Yeah.
So that will impact, the collaborative has our regional EPI, it has our shared services manager, it has 2 full-time public health inspectors, one who spends half of her time in Brookline, and the other half in Newton. We have a 60% contribution to a regional public health nurse, who had been here all winter while our public health nurse was on leave. And it has been an incredible resource. Just to have the additional nursing support has been fantastic. So these are just the realities on the ground. We're prepared for them. We're going to continue to talk to the administration in future years about other strategies for sustaining these programs. But I just think it's important to be transparent with the community about kind of where our staffing is and where the funding comes from to support that staff. And so with that, I'll just slide over to the staffing slide. So we have, on the professional staff side, we have 23.99 FTEs. In addition to that, we have about 2.5 FTEs worth of interns that come in throughout the year. So our full FTE package is 26.48. But when you look at OpenGov, you'll see 23.99, and it's just the way that Charlie Young slots in, like which lines the interns are budgeted in is the reason they're not counted here. So you can see, looking back to FY23 and moving forward, we have seen an increase in staffing. That's been because of some of these grants and some of the investments that we made through things like this, the HCA funds when we had them and the opioid settlement funds. So total staffing is still at about 26.48 when you include all the interns. We've actually seen a 5-year change of an additional 6 staff. We're providing all those additional services that I just talked about on the last slide. Of those 24 or 26 staff, depending on if you want to count the interns or not, 14 of those are not on the town's operating budget. And that's something I've been aware of since I started. You know, when I first started as the policy analyst, I was on HCA funds, so I've been aware from day one about the challenges. We've obviously, like I said, we've got staff on FEMA and tracing, and we've got the DPH grant for MPHC. We've got our entire substance use prevention team on opioid settlement funds. Our community health education specialist is on opioid settlement funds. Our resource navigators on opioid settlement funds. So we're okay right now, right? Additional settlements keep coming in. We have projected out how long that funding will last. I haven't done one since some of these changes have happened, so I've got to go back and look. But we've got probably a 5 to 10 year window with opioid settlement funds at our current spend rate, at which point we're going to have to make some hard decisions about, do additional staff come on the operating budget? Maybe, you know, Wendy talked about the grant that Jefferson's going after. Like, we have staff thinking about how do we continue to attack this through a combination of having those conversations with the administration and the select board about operating budget, but also trying to find funds to sustain some of our staff from state and federal grants. So that's FTEs. I did want to just talk a little bit more about some of the challenges and risks. And I think I've already talked about the expiring grants. ARPA is also ending. We have been transitioning off of ARPA for the last couple of years, so that shouldn't have a significant impact, but we do have, you know, our Qualtrics grants, our data collection and data dashboarding is on ARPA. We paid for a multi-year contract with them to extend us beyond FY27, but at some point we'll have to make a decision about that. And then, you know, the additional federal changes that we've talked about in this room. There's the changes that they're making to benefits like SNAP that is making it harder on our staff because we're having to try to help and support more residents who are being pulled off of certain supports. And the whole vaccine conversation that our public health nurse and community health education staff are having to have with the community, the same way some of our ACPH members are having to do in their own clinics, on top of a whole bunch of other federal changes. So those are the challenges we're facing, but we're prepared for them. We've been aware of them from the beginning, and we'll continue to face them head on. And then lastly, I just wanted to talk a little bit about some of the department changes that we've made in the past year. So we hired Jefferson as our community health education specialist. We've got Eliza, who's been here, our human services resource navigator, now almost 5 months. We hired a new regional epidemiologist who hit the ground running a couple months ago. Obviously, there was a transition in leadership with a new director. In this past month, restructured my previous role, which was assistant director for programming and policy, is now the assistant director for operations. So that the change that I made there was trying to reflect more of what we see in the administration office. So they have an assistant director for operations. I thought it made sense to have one here to help improve our systems. You know, and we've talked about it in this room. There are a lack of SOPs. It's not unique to this department. You have staff that stay for a really long time. They get really comfortable and familiar with their role, and they just kind of do it. And then when they leave, we lose all that institutional knowledge. You have to relearn it over and over and over again. Chloe's dealt with it in her role. Wendy's dealt with it in her role. Like across the board, right? And so with Tanya Hong stepping into that role, my hope is that she's going to go division by division and start working with them to think about what are the SOPs you need to have, how do you draft them, where do we save them, being really systematic moving forward. And not only individually in divisions, but across departments. We work with the select board's office on licensing and permitting. That was sort of the inspiration, frankly. Tanya had been doing that work over the past year with licensing and permitting. So we should be doing that with every department that we touch. Human services, emergency preparedness across the board. So that's my hope for that new role. And then of course, and we've talked about it in this room, the CHIP, some of the big steps that we've taken that have impacted the budget. So we have our Be Well Coalition. We just had a big meeting today with that coalition. So that work continues on the substance use prevention front, and we launched CARES Brookline last month, kind of officially with the new branding. And we're seeing, I think Eliza said, about 10 to 30 residents per week, but each resident is doing multiple searches, and you know, food service, housing needs are big hits on the website. So with that, I think I'll open it up. There's a lot more to be said. I got a lot of really interesting questions from the AC subcommittee that got me thinking about a lot of things, but I thought this was just kind of a good broad overview to share. Great. So what questions do you have?
I have a bunch. So one is, it wasn't clear when you said we lost all these grants.
Yeah.
What does that translate into? What are we not doing because we have lost those grants? And I'm a little confused. If we lost all the grants and we're not doing things, how do we have the same number of people? Because it's people.
Great point. What we have tried to do with those grants, for the most part, I think the emergency preparedness coordinator is the one role. It was established as a full-time role out of ARPA dollars, right? The town was really smart and strategic about not putting a lot of staff on ARPA because they knew the funding was going to run out and we would be left holding the bag, right? That was the one position they allowed. We transitioned that from there to contact tracing, then to FEMA, and now the question becomes, how do we fund this moving forward? And I've got enough funding to get through FY27, and then I will be working over the next year to find a final resolution for funding that position. So we've used some of those grants to support that particular role for the past couple of years. It has funded things like the marijuana study back in 2023, the CHA and the CHIP. So what we've tried to do is the special programming that we can't typically afford in our operating budget. We have tried to use these grants to fund that. So that is one of my big questions. You know, we've got to get together staff right now, maybe we talk about this later during the director's report, are looking at building the year 2 action plan for the CHIP, or starting to establish it so that we can get together as a whole with residents to finalize it. And you know, maybe we want to use a little bit of the tracing money that's left this year to accelerate that and bring in some outside support, but we won't be able to do that in future years. So it has been kind of special projects mostly on those grants, which is why we're able to sustain the existing staff, except for that one particular position.
And what are the implications of losing it sounds like the regional collaborative, you said, so last year?
This is the last year of guaranteed full funding. My expectation is the state is going to fund it. The question becomes at what level, and I don't think they even know at this point.
So at this point, we don't have to worry about losing that epidemiology nursing aspect or expertise for at least another year.
At least another year, but each one of them, right, is aware of that.
So they're all looking elsewhere.
Yeah, and so we, on a quarterly basis, we get together, each of the regional collaboratives in the eastern half of Massachusetts get together and have discussions. And a couple of months ago, when we had our last meeting, one of the things that you're hearing from other health directors that are managing other regions is my town administrator won't even let me hire because they're afraid of, the funding, where's the funding gonna come moving forward? So it's getting harder to, it's going to get harder to retain staff, and it's gonna get harder to hire new staff to replace them. Because we're being transparent with them. This is grant money, this is what's left of the grant.
And it's always hard. People are on soft money and
Yeah.
it's coming. The list you had of the new hires or the hires there left.
Yes.
So how many of those are new people? And I mean, how many of those are new? I'm just thinking presentation wise, you're saying the budget is tight, we're losing these grants, and by the way, we have these 5 new people.
Yeah.
It's like, so these are positions, just turnover?
So the community health education specialist position was a reconfigured role. Of this list, the only role that is absolutely new is the human services resource navigator, and that actually reflects, we go back to.
You might wanna reflect that then, I think.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to think from a presentation.
Repurpose versus
Yeah.
incremental.
Yeah,
Incremental.
Good point.
Similarly, this was more looking forward, when you said Qualtrics, I mean, I think I know what the implications of that are, which is that your inspection?
No, that's, okay, good question. So that's our data collection and data dashboarding website,
You know, so I had no idea when you said Qualtrics, and I think even the CARES term, people won't link that to, that's the new human services
Database, okay.
So.
I know, you live with this, so you're like, surely everyone knows.
No,
But
this is exactly why we do these things.
actually don't, you know, like.
Even I figured it's like CARES, and then as you were talking about it, I said, oh, that's for that.
Right.
Also, and again, you and I had spoken about this, I'm sure you'll hear about this. To cut the bounty program at the same time as you discuss appropriate SNAP is being cut.
Yeah.
I was wondering
People
about
are,
that.
this isn't gonna go over very well. I think they're gonna get pushback and say cut something else.
So the bounty is just gonna be gone because it costs 50,000, or you're taking 50,000 out of the budget?
50,000 being taken out of the budget, and we had to find a place
But
to,
I mean, that was the whole, that was the
That's the
entire
whole-
pie.
yeah.
Okay, so, I guess.
And it's not gonna go over well, apparently, and I haven't
Oh,
watched
no.
it yet. It was discussed at the COA budget hearing
Yeah,
last
that's
week.
what I think, that's what I spoke to somebody else. I think you can expect pushback.
I'm prepared for it.
Like pushback from whom?
From people on the advisory committee who are gonna say,
Like
find something else,
50,000
find somewhere else. Yeah, exactly. These are not the people, this is not the populations that you should be squeezing the most.
We shouldn't, but maybe it can't come from
Well, I don't know.
DH, yeah.
I know.
I hear it. I just. Yeah, it's a great program. It has been going on now for like 5 years,
About,
4 years, I don't know, a long time. And
I just think it's a bad look, it's a bad thing.
So is this the first year that it's been, it will have been on the budget, or was
I-
last year the first?
I think this was the first year that it was fully on the operating budget. It was part of the last override vote.
Yeah. We still had money in our budget, and prior to that, was the president.
Yeah, so it was,
4
it
years.
started as Kresge, then ARPA, and then on the operating budget.
All right, well, but it's otherwise, I thought it was a good presentation. Yeah, I think the main trick will be language that you know,
Yeah,
and also some of those issues. So are we losing then the emergency preparedness person? I mean, are we not gonna have that function?
we're trying to figure that out right now. I've got the year to figure it out. I wish.
We have a year.
If we hadn't had the transition, we may have been a little bit farther along. Sigal and I had talked about it. We've been transparent with the emergency preparedness coordinator from the beginning, right? That this had been, we were cobbling together grant funds to sustain it. So I hate to put somebody in this position, but it is the realities of it. I think there's the potential of making some adjustments to other lines. I would have to get the town administrator on board with that, but I think we could there's a potential to do it within the existing operating budget. My hope is, if push comes to shove, that we try to do that, but that's gonna impact we're gonna have to cut other services. So if we cut from our services line, we could add potentially a staff person, so.
And do you have, and I know this isn't what's gonna come up, do you have a parallel budget for if the override passes, what happens?
I think given the popularity of the Brookline Bounty program, that if an override were to pass and there were $50,000 more for the health department, then that would be my priority.
But the override is not for 1 year, it's ongoing. So for example, some of these other things that end up, as you're projecting out, emergency preparedness, for example, those, or we're not at the stage of we don't have, this is what happens without the budget. I mean, what you have here is this is what happens if an override doesn't pass.
Right, and that's as far as we've gotten.
We don't have a document that says if the override passes, this is what
You
will
get
be
this much
included
more
from
money.
the department.
I suspect the sixth floor has been thinking about it, but I think it would be beyond me to speak to that.
David has a question. David, please.
Yes, thank you. So in terms of the FTEs related to grants and external sources, even though there are several grants that are expiring, which you went over previously, it looks like FTE wise, there will still be several FTEs that are funded from grants and external sources. Is that correct?
That's correct.
It's simply a different set of grants than the ones that you outlined previously?
Yes, and I can make that more clear when I talk to AC on Wednesday. Yes, so it's separate grant, and then the bulk of staff are on opioid settlement funds.
All right. Relatedly, the grants that are expiring, who do you anticipate filling in those gaps with the expiration of the grants, or will there simply not be further work in those areas?
We're gonna have to continue applying for additional grants. We've used that grant funding for special programming, and so instead of our kind of day-to-day operations, it's been things like the CHA chip, because that doesn't happen on a regular basis. So the next time we come to wanting to do another community health assessment or an improvement plan, we're gonna have to find a new source of funding or scale back the level of the work. There was a lot of staff involved in that last one. It was a very robust plan because we were lucky enough to have that grant funding. So we could do a CHA chip that looks very different and is scaled back. But I think as far as day-to-day operations go, the grant funding shouldn't impact day-to-day operations.
Okay. And in terms of the contact tracing grant in particular, I'm assuming that was COVID related, but are there other areas where contact tracing is something that's still actively being utilized?
The grant funding or that kind of work?
Well, that kind of work.
Yeah, so that contact tracing work continues to happen. Our public health nurse and our regional epidemiologist and our regional nurse are all doing contact tracing year round. There's a whole bunch of communicable diseases that we have to report on and do contact tracing on.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, David.
All right, well, any other comments or?
I mean, the emergency coordination, I just don't know from the other, let's say, EMT, the emergency services, but fire, police. I mean, is there any kind of collective source that we could tap into and say it's not really a DHHS responsibility per se unilaterally?
Yeah.
I mean,
So, and that was how we got the FEMA grant money, was
Right.
collaborating with the emergency preparedness manager and director in the fire department. We said, and both of our departments have had people in those roles. We had the EP Buddies program that was being managed over in emergency preparedness, and then we have our own work that we're doing, a whole host of programming. I think Sarah mentioned she did 33 trainings last year with residents, a lot of it at the Council on Aging, but throughout the community. She does stop the bleed trainings. She works with CAT on the CPR. She manages the AED equipment to make sure that it's getting checked once a year and we're replacing equipment as needed. So it is my number one priority from a staffing perspective moving forward.
Do we get money from BAA for the marathon? Because I know, I mean, we staff a couple of locations,
Yes.
MRC and CERT.
That's Sarah, right? So that's our emergency preparedness coordinator.
Right, you know, but again, the question is there monies flowing through to the town because DPW moves trucks in the
Yeah.
way, et cetera, or we all do this gratis in support
I
of.
can't answer that. My gut says that there's probably some.
Just looking for a way to see if you can
level.
leverage, like, you know, our capacity through another funding source.
Idea.
Oops.
Yeah, so she's a tremendous asset. I mean, our flu clinics is another one with the
Yeah.
MRCs, and I just don't know how we would manage the MRCs and those, like, we would figure it out, but it would be much more difficult, and we would have to take away from another program
Right.
in order to do that. We're incredibly lucky. She's got an incredible skill set, and I'm hopeful that we can keep her. So that's.
So from either the state or the federal level, that create and or support those MRCs, whether or not that's because she ultimately is the glue that keeps those organizations
Great.
functional.
So when we submitted our mid-year report, and we've been doing this for years with Mass DPH on the tracing grant, they asked, do you have any other positions that have been funded by this that we should be aware of? And do you want to have a conversation if additional funding becomes available? And of course, who doesn't say yes?
Right.
So I did point that out to them in this year's mid-year report, that is a vulnerable position for us. For a lot of towns, for a lot of regions, it's been tracing, right?
Yeah.
Finding EPIs, getting EPIs placed in some of the regional collaboratives.
Okay. All right, well, we'll see where things go on this.
You know, we didn't talk about rodents. I got quite a few questions about rodents. I'm sure I will be talking about on Wednesday. But I don't feel the need to go back down there because I feel like we talked about that before. But we are working, what I will say broadly, is that we are working on a revision to our rodent control action plan and changing some of the staffing model because I don't think what we're currently doing is very effective. So stay tuned.
So I did have conversations with a member of the Council on Aging, who also a town meeting member and an advisory committee.
Oh, now you've just completed the Venn diagram.
So you know who it was,
Yes.
and I tried to convince that person that we should fund the Valley program by taking on the program. I was unsuccessful. Convinced that.
And one of the challenges there is that we have an existing contract with a vendor that I can't break without paying for a certain date. So even if you were to cut from that, I'd still have to find money somewhere else to keep that. So yeah, it's challenging.
Oh, well, okay. Should we move on to warrant articles? Do we have sufficient time to have a little discussion sometime?
I would love to, if you wouldn't mind.
Great. So there are several. So one of those is warrant article, and this isn't any particular order, but it's maybe in the order that's in on the note. So the first one on this is the resolution, which we were asked, I think, to comment on, the resolution on
Yes.
Medicare for all, warrant article 21, which reads, it's probably the warrant. So should look at that other version.
I noticed that, at least in the current version, that if we're talking about now the Medicare for all.
Medicare for all,
That's
that's the
21.
one we're talking about.
That our current representative has not yet signed on
Right.
to the legislation sponsor.
So, I mean, I did force myself to read the bill. The one that you did as well, right?
It was, it's very,
So I understand that this bill has been introduced for many years. This is not the first time it ever passes, but
On the other hand, I mean, basically what it proposes to doing is to create universal coverage in Massachusetts through a single payer system. It sets up a trust. I don't know if Shira, if you had a chance to look at it, would certainly value your comments on it. You know, basically it sets up a trust, it's got governance of the trust, and this is governance, which is exceedingly boring. And then it basically says that there'll be a payroll tax, both on employers and employees, which would all go into the trust. Also that any payments from Medicare and stuff like that would also go into the trust. As well as payments from private insurers, and that the trust then would be basically paying for healthcare services without co-pays, without deductibles.
It creates an tremendous, basically, bureaucracy to replicate CMMS and private insurers. You know, we have in parallel. The assumption is that somehow then those particular entities just fall by the wayside. You know, and the state then creates its own a priori.
Right, it replaced, I mean, ultimately, it's primarily about replacing private insurance with the state program.
Where it's silent for me reading through the whole legislation is that trying to ensure that the service providers will not only sign up and agree, you could say, well, maybe like the gun to their head because the hospitals in your state, you can't move the hospital and move your practice very comfortably. But it also doesn't speak to, are you assuming, let's say, current Medicare reimbursement rates as your floor for what this will do? To try to ensure that there's access to services. Yeah. It's one thing to create a bureaucracy to say, we'll collect the funds, and the trust will disperse them in theory to pay for something, but they don't say what they're gonna pay for necessarily. I mean, there's the assumption that there'll be boards to do quality control and assurance and try to make sure that there is appropriate evidence-based medicine. Yeah. But you know, in those details, it's like you're trying to replicate perhaps decades worth of work, or saying you're co-opting it, but they don't speak of what they'll in effect sort of take in. And within a year of this legislation, it'll all have to be operational. I have reservations for how this could feasibly work, and that the trust itself, what kind of clawback from all the contributions we've all made as individuals through payroll deductions or so to the Medicare trust that exists today, you know, to say to give a floor for the funding for this trust, because to build that bureaucracy a priori, you're going to need to have a large dedication of your budget to in effect create an insurance company, the state insurance company. So
you sound, Shira, do you have thoughts?
I don't have specific thoughts about that piece of legislation that's before the legislature, although I'm sure your critiques are valid, and I'm sure there's a lot of weaknesses. I think the point here, though, is to have Brookline weigh in support of the concept of something that's a single payer, and to get our legislators to be behind it. I think she specifically put in this legislation because it happens to be before the Massachusetts state legislature. But I don't think she's looking for Brookline to think about the details for better or for worse. I think the idea is, like all resolutions, showing our support for a concept that will be negotiated in detail, you know, in its own process. So with all of the limitations of all of the different options, you know, just like, you know, what's the best form of government or the worst form of government, except for, you know, the one we have. So similarly, like, you know, we need a better healthcare system. I don't know if we could have a friendly amendment to say, or similar legislation, so it doesn't sound like it, you know, we're only endorsing this specific version. I don't think she cares or Brookline really care. I mean, we care, but I don't think we're weighing in on that. We're weighing in on, do we want to give a message to our federal legislators or, you know, federal representatives that we want to do this, or our state representatives that we want to do this. And for that, I am in favor. Yeah.
Yeah, clarification too is that it says that all residents shall be eligible, not that all residents will be enrolled. Because the assumption is this should be universal, so by default, this is a benefit. You know, so even the legislation as written or so shall be eligible, which means, well, I could choose either to participate or not, as the case may be. How much as an individual shall be eligible versus will be registered. you know, in other words, it's in effect, as soon as you're born, you're in the program.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I mean, for Medicaid and Medicare, you're eligible, right? You still have to sign up, right? So you might have to, what's important is to get quote continuous eligibility, which this says it is. So there's no time limits, not like Medicaid where you have to re-enroll every 6 months.
But then but if you say shall, then, and you enroll, first, the assumption is, well, do you have an alternative? Are you pursuing, whether
Well,
it's
it's not clear there is.
concierge care or,
I'm
you
not
know,
sure there is an alternative actually with this, but, you know, because it did say in there actually that providers, there was some provision that sort of said, if you take this, you can't take others. I was a little surprised at that actually.
Mhm.
But I do agree with Shira. I think the main,
Yeah.
even though I think there are questions about the specific, first of all, I think there's an ice cube's chance in hell that this is actually gonna pass. B, even if it passed, at least in Vermont, I mean, the likelihood that the federal government would allow us to do this, for example, to use Medicare payments or Medicaid payments, certainly under the current administration, somewhere between 0 and 0%. So I think this is basically a signal that says we as, you know, it's not quite as silly as saying Brookline is a nuclear-free zone, but it is, you know, which we said in town meeting many years ago. But it's basically a signal that says we think single payer, it's like Shira said, is a good idea. I think that's what they're asking. I don't know, what do you think?
I was very moved by what Lynn had to say because I think you're dialing into the nitty gritty
Yeah.
and it seems like it would be a very bad idea to stand on a hill and be like, we support this, but we don't really know how all these little details will work out and we don't want to be like stuck in the details. Like, this feels very like, let's see, like you're neither here nor there. Maybe really we support some kind of single payer insurance, but not really as it's written.
Well, we support the philosophy of universal
Yes.
access. I mean, no one's gonna dispute the fact that
Yes.
everyone needs to have a right to
Yes.
healthcare, no matter what.
Indeed, but
Well,
like maybe not in the way that it was presented in that warrant article.
There are two elements here. One is right to healthcare. The other is whether you think a single payer and the reduction. I mean, the overhead rate for Medicare is 3% share or something like that. The overhead rate for private insurance is somewhere between 20 and 25%. So even though that's a one-time saving, so it isn't, you know, it'll sort of like a tariff, right? It'll cut the cost. It doesn't mean that there won't be inflation over time, but it does mean that you're taking, if it works, it takes roughly 20%.
And whether or not providers in the state will accept Medicare rates across the board for all participants versus what they do today for Medicare and the dual eligibles, Medicaid, but then all that private, you know, you negotiate those reimbursement rates for every activity you do. So, yeah, but again, philosophically, I agree, you know, we support that concept of trying to ensure universality and access.
So I guess the question then is, well, how do we manage this going forward? It sounds like we don't have sufficient consensus now for us to draft a note that says we support this. I think that's what I'm hearing, I think, from
my reservations, again, the devil will be in the details well after we, again, at least push this forward or so as a concept or so. I'll agree if others, you know, feel strongly that.
I mean, I do think it's largely performative.
What if she removed that component? I mean, what if can we discuss alternatives or make recommendations back to her?
Well, it's already in the warrant, so, I mean, we could ask, you could make amendments, so we could ask her, right, Shira? I mean, we could.
Yeah. I mean, she reached out to me about this, and this wasn't a concern that I thought about. But maybe, I mean, the whereas is kind of okay because it's true, this is in there, but maybe the resolution should just be endorses some sort of single payer and maybe that would be, you know.
Yeah. What, do you want to have a conversation with her and see if she's open to that? Because I think that sounds like where the bulk of us are, which is we're supportive of single payer. We have some concerns about some of the specifics in the language here. And
And that way we're not endorsing a specific piece of legislation that is a moving target anyway, but more a
Yeah,
concept.
yes. I think that's kind of like what we, or at least okay, sort of sums it up.
All right, great. Why don't you let us know? I mean, we do have time. We have another meeting before.
Okay, I'll reach out to her this week.
Terrific.
I won't be here for the April meeting, I have to do that, but
Okay.
it's okay.
All right, well, let's look at some of the other ones that we have on the list. This was the one that, again, we were specifically asked to look at. We are, I think there's, so 14, which one is that? So 14, I think 14 is straightforward. Basically, and we may or may not even need to comment on it. So Brookline passed an ADU ordinance, I don't know if it was last year or even a little more than that, 18 months ago. And then the Attorney General's, then the state passed state law, the Affordable Homes Act, which included provisions around ADUs that were more generous in the sense than what Brookline's were, had fewer restrictions on what ADUs could be. And the Attorney General basically said our ADU bylaw was not in compliance with state law. And basically all this does, I mean, there had been some Sturm und Drang and discussion within the committees, but basically at this point, you're pretty much, this resolution is pretty much straightforward, consistent with what the state law is. And there was some concern that one particular town meeting member, Dick Benko, was going to offer an amendment, which was different, that would be controversial, but that's been resolved. So I don't think there's going to be any significant opposition. I'm not sure we even need to comment on it.
And
If we
it's
do-
like it's
We
like
already talked
a
about it, like right, like
a
last year.
reconciliation, yeah.
So I don't think we need to, not that I understand where we are. But there are other ones. So the 16,
Yeah.
I think 16 is the one that's 26 Pleasant Street, which is lighting up the town meeting listserv with like an infinite variety of comments. I have restrained myself from getting into the conversation because listserv conversations, as many of you know, they're usually more heat than light. I think, so what this is, if you all did it, is there is a parking lot on the corner of Pleasant and John Street that a developer is proposing to rezone so they could put in a 6-story, I believe, and maybe a 7-story rental apartment building, which would have like 120 units, I think, and a certain proportion, according to the inclusionary zoning, would be affordable. And that's basically it. There are neighborhood oppositions about the process, that this is the zoning article is being put forward by an agent of the developer, not going through the planning committee. There have not been many formal hearings. There's just been a couple presentations. There are people concerned about parking. There are people concerned about traffic. My personal belief is consistent with the CHIP, which says we need more housing in town. We need affordability. Main strategy for affordability. There are 2 components to affordability. One is the production of affordable housing. There is a limited number of affordable housing units in this, consistent with our inclusionary zoning. It also produces a significant number of more units, I believe, and I believe the evidence is strong that says simply providing significant numbers of new market rate housing will also blunt the rise of market rate rents. So I think we could write something in support of this, and not comment on the issues of parking and traffic and
Although it's
due
consistent with
process
the
and stuff like that.
MBTA is a community access to mass transit right there
It is right.
in Cleveland. That's sort of a huge point.
So that would be my recommendation is, basically can take something similar that we've written for the last 2 years since the CHIP was produced with our sense of the relationship between housing.
I feel like you've written this.
I've written this, right.
You've written this one, but it
Might
was like
update it a
it's a
little, might
different warrant
modify it a little
article,
bit,
but
but
it's a different one.
From that, from that video you circulated or
Yeah.
so too, from the last meeting too, I think that, you know, the Minneapolis
Yeah.
example in particular, so citing that, yes, there are urban examples where this has been, has a positive effect in terms of rent control.
And then you raised one, which I must admit I haven't looked at carefully, which was the one about changing the rules about inclusionary zoning as to the threshold, lowering the threshold, no, increasing the threshold of units.
That are eligible for a cash in
For
lieu
cash, right.
of constructing an affordable unit.
So the previous belief was we wanted more units and people were worried the money that went to the Affordable Housing Trust wouldn't actually result in the production of units. This argument is saying that's not true, and in fact, this is inhibiting.
Yeah, at least the modeling that was shown attached to that Warren article suggested that clearly they can build more units, so whether through the BHA or other nonprofit entities, and I see that one of the sponsors, Deborah Brown from the BCDC, Brookline Community Development Corporation or so, is also trying to promulgate this because I think it can be a more effective leveraging of capital towards affordable housing.
So we can probably use some variation of the same rationale based on the layout so that John and I can work on. The only other one that's not on here, just this is flagging for future. So David will be voting tomorrow morning at the select board. Many of you know there's been a proposed development in what's called the Chestnut Hill Commercial Area, which is out on Route 9. There's been work on that going on for the past 2.5 years, proposal for a very substantial mixed-use development that would, if built, if planned, if zoning goes through and the tax certainty agreement is in there, would result in not only about, I think, 120 new market rate units plus a certain number of affordable units plus $11 million going to the Affordable Housing Trust more than ever before, plus net of $5 to $6 million a year in new tax revenue to the town. So that there is local neighborhood opposition to that based on many of the principles, common things one hears from neighbors about development of their community, some concerns about traffic. That one requires, so the 26 Pleasant Street is, because it's only housing, only requires a 50% majority. Because of the mixed use adjustment to Wells, it will require a 2/3 majority. So the select board will decide tomorrow morning whether to put it on the warrant as a special town meeting within the town meeting. If they do put it on, I think we should be in support of it for the same reasons we always have been, as well as the tax revenue, which will allow us to reestablish the boundary. No, but it's actually, to be honest, the taxes won't actually start coming in until the building is done and stuff like that, between probably 3 to 5 years. So we shouldn't say that it could start tomorrow, but it would help.
Right.
It's the kind of commercial development that in theory would reduce the need for ongoing overrides as we've had to have for these last several years. So
And in addition, my understanding of the plans also include potentially medical office
there is
suites as
medical
well.
office buildings.
So from adding an access for
Yep.
members of the community to medical services, preferably primary care, it would be ideal if there were a group practice or so.
There will be a medical office building.
Yeah.
That's part of it. So again, that's to be continued. We don't know till they vote tomorrow morning, again, because of some of the recent discussions that select board put off the discussion till tomorrow morning. So the vote tomorrow. Okay, so I think if that goes through, we can write something in
In
support.
favor.
And I think that's the warrant,
All right.
other than everything else that's in the budget. But
Yeah.
all right, well, good. I think we covered a lot. John, do you want to give us your report? We didn't give you much time, so, and it wasn't in the
It was, I'm just realizing, I was just looking for it, and it's not attached, so I apologize for that.
Yeah.
Because staff put a lot of work, no, it's probably my fault, so we'll email it out.
Interesting. So sorry about that.
I didn't see it in the packet.
We had so many other attachments, I'm not surprised it's such a list.
3 pages. 4 pages.
Oh, so if you,
128 of 133.
Oh, good.
oh, so that's if you pull the whole.
Oh, it's
packet.
in the packet.
Oh,
I never do it
okay.
that way.
I'm not-
I
You
always-
feel better now.
I always look at the separate items.
That's what that's what I was just doing, and
Packet.
I couldn't click on it, yes, so it is in the packet.
All right, good for you.
But couple quick updates. So we have Darlene and Jefferson have been working really hard on some exciting community events. So we do have one coming up later this month called Parenting in Real Time, Navigating Difficult Conversations with Your Child.
It's important.
So we have Michelle Visor and Matt Dubois, who will be kind of our expert panel, and I will be moderating that discussion, and I will certainly not at all be doing that as a parent of a 13-year-old, and selfishly asking my own questions, but really excited about that. So we'll have an in-person event on March 26th, and then we'll be following it up with a virtual event on March 30th. So we'll give parents both options, because we know it can be challenging to get to in-person events. Jefferson has been working and doing programming with our first group of 10 health champions. We will be meeting with them again tomorrow night. And then he's also working on our National Public Health Week programming, which will be coming up next month. Darlene will be with the trustees of the public libraries on Wednesday. I hope to join them as well after AC, as long as there's time. So we'll be talking about the vending machines and getting their support on that, and then moving forward with that project. Policy front made some headway, though not much on regulations. So the hang up on Kratom is just that there apparently is a new model regulation. When I looked at MAHB's website this month, all I'm seeing is the old one from last year. So I'm trying to find out if there is actually kind of a final, quote unquote, final draft. If not, I think we just go with what we have, make whatever revisions need to be made to work for Brookline and move it forward. At this point, I think Anthony sent some additional updates to Charlie and I the other day. We're going to meet next week on this to get his input. I think at this point, 11 communities have banned either synthetic or Kratom as a whole. So the momentum is growing for banning Kratom. And then Roland and I, hopefully we'll get a chance to meet this month. Roland in our EH division. So we're down one staff in our EH division right now. There's a lot of inspectional need. And so Roland, I've had his focus on supporting that staff and getting out into the field more frequently. So he and I have not had a chance to sit down together and talk about animal regulations. And I just don't think, as much as it's a priority to get it done, and his staff certainly want to see the finalized regulations, I just, staff have been very overwhelmed with the number of inspections they have to do right now, being short-staffed. So I've been prioritizing that. So we will get to that soon. And I think Roland and Kaylee and Di are going to be interviewing candidates for that open senior inspector position, hopefully in the next few weeks, and that will resolve that issue. Work continues in nursing and epi. What a cat report here. Since last month, I can't remember who asked this question earlier. Investigated and controlled 102 non-coronavirus related infections. She's thrilled to report there are no active TB cases being managed right now, which is wonderful. At one point, we were up to 3.
Speaking of contact.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that's
Yeah.
a contact tracing illness right there.
Yeah, and also happy to report that we were not informed by Mass DPH that we had any measles
Yeah.
contact tracing to do. So when I heard those cases, I got
There
a
were
little
two
nervous.
coming through.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a few weeks ago now. Continuing to do vaccines for children. On the human services front, I did mention the CARES Brookline, our human services database, database. We are now tracking data real time, which is exciting.
364 users, that's great, I'm sure it's more right now.
Yeah, and food services and finding help with housing are the top 2, so that's not really a surprise. And just having a lot of good community conversations. We met today to kind of talk about what do the next 6 months look like, because we've got kind of 3 areas that she needs to work on. Continuing to support residents in need, training up other staff in town who could be doing some of this navigation work with her, so that, if it's a council on aging, social worker, they can go in themselves and do their own navigation. So that's the next step for her, is to start doing that training. And then the third piece will be engaging with other kind of local nonprofits, human service providers, to get them to claim their cards on this program. So that will be what much of the next 6 months looks like for her, is doing a lot of that work, getting out into the community, doing some of that engagement. She said she's speaking with about somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 30 residents a week right now. So it's growing. Substance use prevention staff, our Be Well staff had the wellness summit this morning. We had a great 2.5-hour meeting with peer leaders kind of leading some of that discussion with us, which was exciting.
That's great.
So now Layla's taking all that discussion back, all the notes back, and gonna distill it, and we're gonna come up with 3 to 5 priorities, and we're gonna create working groups for each of those priority areas, and people are gonna commit to helping do that work. And that will be part of the year 2 action plan for the CHIP as well, because the Be Well Coalition is one of the big areas for the CHIP. So
Great.
that will help at least drive that section of the CHIP forward, which is really exciting. Riley's been really busy with the Regional Tobacco Collaborative. They described some of the work they've been doing in there around some of the materials that are not FDA authorized. And, we went back and forth on how long we want to give these stores to pull stuff off the shelves. Some towns and cities were kicking around the idea of up to 6 months. And so we came down on 2 months. We felt that was fair to the retailers, gave them some time, but I don't have,
Which materials
6
are these?
months.
I'm sorry.
These are non-approved, I think these are the vapes.
Yeah,
Okay.
like something, they keep coming up with new things.
Yeah, so the FDA has stepped in and put together some, what they are calling marketing granted orders. So the things that retailers are allowed to sell, the FDA has stepped in and kind of dictated what those items are. Makes our job and Riley's role much easier to enforce when we have that kind of spelled out by the FDA. So we'll be enforcing that in the near future. And then, like I said, inspectional services has just been incredibly busy between housing and nuisance complaints and restaurants. And that team is always busy. And there isn't really a slow time for inspectional services. Housing, this is a town that has a lot more rental housing than a lot of other communities, and so there are a lot of complaints that come out of housing. And then the restaurants, and then we have pools, and then we have camps, and we have keeping of animals, and on and on and on. And we try to, and I'm still learning this aspect, but we try to phase each of those areas to different times of the year so that it all doesn't all the licensing and permitting doesn't drop at once. So.
I had talked with Segal about the idea of sort of proactive housing. I guess it's just, we never can get ahead of the responsive ones and able to do the proactive, but I just wonder if that could, if we were ever once, I don't know, if we got some grant to do that or something like that, and then we're able to expect in advance whether that would decrease the number of complaints.
Yeah, we talked about this with Alec Leibowitz as well, because he had some ideas around doing kind of inspections and then giving people kind of a few years. I think Segal's perspective, and I'll speak to it because she's more of the expert on the inspectional side than I am, was essentially you end up inspecting a lot of housing that doesn't have any problems when you do it that way. And what you really want to focus on are the challenging cases. And so that typically being complaint-based is just a more efficient way of doing it. And, when we did some back of the napkin math with Alec, and it was very expensive.
Okay.
And so the fees that you would have to generate, which would then fall, I think Alec's perspective, and I don't want to speak for him, but I will, and he can correct me if he wants to come back, was, wanting to protect vulnerable populations, right? But these fees would end up probably getting pushed back onto the renters by the landlords. And so it was, it's conceptually a great idea.
It seemed like
It just requires a lot of staff time to do all those housing inspections to get through the whole housing stock.
related to the upcoming events, I should have mentioned during the announcements that the Friends is having an event. I'm sure you're aware of it.
Tuesday,
Tuesday, April 7th.
7th.
They're giving friends, one will be the reward that Frank is going to be getting. The awesome award, which I think is very nice. Do you know that?
I know of,
Yeah.
I don't remember.
Great person.
So anyhow, we should all try. All right, terrific. Well, great reading, great report. Again, it's been a lot.
These reports have been incredibly helpful. So we have some reporting that we do. We obviously have what we report in the budget book every year, and then there's the annual report that the town produces.
Yeah.
Staff always help with that. And these reports have actually been incredibly helpful to help us get through those annual reports. So we're really starting to try to become efficient and say, all right, what are we reporting out already? On what time frame, and how do we reuse that and repurpose that information? And I think there's even more there. I think we could be using a lot of this material in our communication to the public as well. So it's we're going to put it to good use. So
That's great.
Appreciate that you all enjoy it and appreciate it. That's good.
All right, cool. Set to adjourn?
I think there's such.
All right. Your motion?
We adjourn.
Yes,
All right,
I
very
will
good.
second that.
All right, thank you all for joining.
Well, I'm
Thank
sorry,
you.
we're here